down ever.
Yeah, I know. All right. Hey there, my name's Danny Leibrandt, and I'm the founder of Pest Control SEO, where we grow pest control companies with SEO. Today, I have Greg Gifford, who is a local SEO expert and has been in local SEO for over 15 years and has been in SEO for over 20 years. So, certified expert. So glad to have Greg on here. And just a few more accolades. He's spoken at hundreds of local SEO conferences, and he is one of the platinum experts for the Google Business Profile Forum, which there are only 12 in the world. So if you want to learn about Google Business Profile and local SEO, this is the guy. So glad to have Greg on here. And yeah, Greg, thanks for coming on.
So you give me an intro like that, I feel like a lot of pressure to say really smart stuff. And now people are going to be either really happy and go, wow, that lived up, or people are going to be like, who was this joker? Like, what is he even talking about? So it's kind of like,
Yeah. Well, I'd say I'm a copywriter at heart. That's kind of how I got my start. So I always like to start with a big hook where, we want to mention everything that you've done because, why first thing people think when they come on here is why should they listen to you? So now
Sure.
they have a reason to listen to you. So
Right.
yeah, man, I'd like to jump straight into your journey of how did you get into SEO initially? So you've been in it for over 20 years. How did you first find SEO?
So way back in the day, I was a Flash designer. So I guess you could say was part of the reason they killed Flash, because Flash killed the internet. It was the stupid intro animations and crazy goofy stuff that people would do on websites, but that was what I did. And I actually had a company that built Flash websites, and we realized pretty quickly that the content in the Flash websites wasn't showing up in search results. So we figured out how to get that content to show up in search results, not realizing that we were really breaking the rules and doing some nefarious stuff. That was kind of how I first started trying to figure out, hey, what do you do to get a site to show up better in Google? And then my partners and I decided to end that venture, and I went to go get a job somewhere. And Flash, even though I kind of was starting to figure out the Google thing, Flash was my primary skill set. So I ended up working at a website company that did car dealership websites for used car dealers as their Flash guy. And then pretty quickly they were like, wow, you're way overqualified. Why don't you run the whole design department? So then I did that. And then they said, wow, you're really good at marketing. Why don't you run our marketing department? And then I did that. And then after I was there for maybe a year or two, year and a half, they wanted to start selling SEO as a service. And we started interviewing for the role, and it turned out that I knew more about it than any of the people we were interviewing. So the owner of the company said, why don't you start that department, because we can hire anybody to do marketing. And that's when I became like really official. And then I started speaking at conferences and doing things, and kind of took off from there.
Mm, awesome. So tell me, because I've only been in SEO for a few years, I'm kind of a younger guy. Tell me what SEO and ranking on Google is like back 20 years ago.
Oh man, it was so much easier than it is now. I mean, literally back then it was, do you have the keyword on the page, you're going to show up kind of thing. And then, early days, just get a bunch of links. Didn't matter where the links were from, didn't matter if they were relevant. Like back in the early days, Google literally did kind of just match keyword to keyword and then say, all right, keyword's there. This guy's got more links. He's going to show up number one. And then local was really easy. It was just basically doing all the stuff on your Google Places or Google Plus Places or Google Places for Business or whatever they've called the name over the years. But yeah, I mean, it was literally you fill some stuff out and boom, you jump right up to the top and you're awesome. And then Google started figuring out, hey, maybe we should put a little bit more effort into this, because just having the keyword on the page doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good result. And things got more complex after that. But yeah, it used to be really easy. There were things that I was doing with citations back in the day, that I had a car dealership that was like 45 minutes away from downtown Dallas, ranking number one for Dallas Hyundai dealer, just because we went and got them a bunch of citations, because back then having more citations meant you were better, and Google figured that out and turned that around pretty quickly. But back in the day, why not take advantage of it? If it was something that you knew was working and it wasn't really against the rules, you could kind of get away with a lot of things you can't get away with now. And it wasn't dishonest, but it did kind of result way back in the day of you'd have sites showing up that didn't really deserve to be showing up.
Yeah, no, I've basically heard that across the industry. So yeah, completely agree. So tell me how you got your start at what is it, SearchLab Digital? Tell me
Yep.
about SearchLab Digital and what's your role there?
So I worked at a couple of agencies that focused exclusively on doing SEO for car dealerships. Then I left and went to work at another agency that concentrated on dealerships but did stuff outside of automotive. And that was not a good fit. So I was only there for a few months. And then I ended up landing at SearchLab when I left there. It was kind of a crazy story. I was years ago. I ran an SEO conference in Dallas called State of Search. It's put on by DFW SEM, which is the oldest SEO networking group in the country. And they started doing a conference, and because I was on the board, I started running the conference. And so then I've always just been a part of that event, even years later when I am not part of the organization anymore because I don't have time. And so I was speaking at that event, and the owner of SearchLab was also speaking at that event, and he had seen on social media that I was looking for a new role, and so he sent me a message and said, "Hey, I'd like to take you to lunch, talk to you about maybe coming to work at SearchLab." And I was like, "Sure, I'll take a free lunch." And I went and had lunch with him, and I knew they were kind of small, so I didn't have high expectations, but everything he said was exactly aligned with the kind of place I wanted to be. So I ended up at SearchLab, and now I'm probably never leaving because it's just a really, really special kind of alignment of all the leadership team here.
Okay, awesome. And what industries do you guys serve? Is it anything local or what
Yeah, so it's just
particular?
we are a local SEO agency, so we'll work with any client that needs local SEO from single location up to multi-location stuff. Any vertical, really. We also do paid search. Paid search doesn't have to be local, but a lot of our clients are locally focused. But we have a lot of car dealership clients just because for 12 years of my career, I was working at agencies that only did SEO for dealerships. And I've spoken at all the automotive things for years, so everybody just kind of knows who I am. So we tend to get a lot of automotive clients. We've also got healthcare, we've got home services, we've got restaurants, we've got lawyers, so anything really that has a need to show up in one particular area.
Okay, awesome. So let's say a local business owner is listening to this right now, maybe they're not too big, maybe they're making, a few hundred K a year. What would you say is the first thing that they need to do to start ranking on Google, whether that be their Google business profile, their website? Like, what is something easy that business owners can do right away that they're not doing?
Well, I think the most important thing that people miss out on is there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of webinars. There's a lot of training courses. There's a lot of blog posts. And people will go learn a little bit about local SEO and then go try to implement that stuff. And it's like something I always talk about. It's the checklist approach. It's here's a checklist of things because these things matter. Go do these things and you'll do better. And sure, doing those things is better than not doing those things. But the most important step is to understand why those things matter, not just blindly follow the checklist. So I think the most important thing for a business owner is to spend the time to understand the why of the things that are affecting your visibility, and then doing an analysis of your site versus your local competition, because it's not local SEO is really difficult because it's not universal. The things that work for one vertical won't work for another vertical, and the things that work in one city won't work in another city. Like you do pest control SEO. Pest control SEO for a guy in the middle of nowhere in Iowa that there's not really any other pest control solutions for 50 miles in any direction needs a different approach than a guy in downtown of a crowded market like LA or New York or Chicago. So again, the checklist thing doesn't really work. So the most important thing is to have enough understanding to either do that analysis yourself or have enough understanding to realize as a business owner, you're probably not going to have the time or the desire to learn all this stuff. and then go find a qualified partner that's going to help you. Because just starting to do SEO and saying, well, let me go do something with my business profile, or let me go do something with my content, isn't necessarily going to be effective, because the reason that you're not showing up higher than your competitors in search results may not be that one thing that you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's actually a really good point. I agree. There's a lot of nuance even within an industry. So I am specifically pest control, and I still have a client that's doing $35 million a year and another one who's doing $100K a year. So
Yeah.
it is completely different where, this one has 11 locations. Okay, like how do we manage that? And how many pages do we need set up for each location? And then for the Google business profiles, all this stuff. So
Yep.
yeah, there is definitely a lot of nuance. And I agree that there's no like clear cut solution. It needs to be created custom to the company itself. So yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree there.
Yeah, custom approach is always going to outperform the kind of checklist cookie cutter approach. But again, doing something is better than doing nothing. So at a basic level, to really answer your question, if a business owner is listening to this and they want to know what's the thing that I can go do that's going to help, think about, are you doing any SEO at all? If you're not, doing something's better than nothing. So yeah, even though the checklist approach isn't great, go find a checklist. Go listen to one of those podcasts or webinars or training courses to figure out, here are the kind of basic things that you can do. And you're going to see some improvement there. And that maybe it's, work yourself up, learn a little bit so that you're able to have better conversations with potential vendor partners or freelancers, to then have a better understanding of what to ask and how to vet those people so that you can move towards finding the right partner to help.
Definitely. So I know you've put out a lot of content about local SEO. You've done tons of conferences. Is there any content of yours that people should go and watch? Like, is there any like one or two videos
obviously.
But which piece of content do people need to consume of yours?
Yeah, so I've got a weekly video series called Local Search Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, a new episode is released. It's put out on our blog, and then we share links on social media. We also put it up on YouTube, so it's pretty easy to find. If you just do a Google search for Local Search Tuesdays, it'll come up, and you can follow. There's even a kind of a video channel page on our site where you can drop your email address in, and our video host will just email you every time a new episode drops, so you can watch that. Also, Bright Local is a pretty prominent local SEO tool company, and they have a division called the Bright Local Academy. I've done several training courses, including one big, long, intro to local SEO training course there. Those are all free to take. I've also done training courses at SEMrush, for the SEMrush Academy, which are also free courses you can take. I've got 5 or 6 or 8, I don't even remember, a bunch of courses there that people can watch as well. So any of those would be good. And then, if you follow my video series, whenever I speak at a conference, typically a couple of weeks after the conference, I will post a recording of that session so you can just watch the sessions that I'm sharing.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned Bright Local, SEMrush. What SEO tools do you individually use? Do you have kind of like a toolkit of the ones that you use kind of on a daily basis?
For sure. I think by far the best local SEO tool out there is called Places Scout. It does a lot of things that other tools don't do, and it's a pretty comprehensive list of things that you can do with it. It's also kind of smart the way that they put it together, because you don't have to buy a subscription to the entire tool set. You can just use certain elements of the tool set and only pay for the elements you use. That's what we use for reputation management stuff. So like review tracking and Q&As from the Google Business Profile, you can really kind of customize what it's looking at there. It's phenomenal at that. Bright Local is really good as well. We mentioned them a minute ago. They've got a really good tool set, some really good kind of competitive analysis stuff. They were primarily a citation company, but citations don't really matter as much anymore, so they were really smart several years back to kind of branch out and add new things in. Whitespark is really great. Whitespark has a bunch of different tools. Also is a company that initially started as just a citation management place, but now has a lot of other different tool sets. They've got a really cool business profile monitoring kind of system that will alert you immediately if there are any changes that happen to your profile, and they also have the best local rank tracker out there.
Awesome. I've actually never heard of Places Scout, and I feel like I've tried most of these tools. Is that a new one?
No, it's been around for a long time. They kind of, I guess, kind of fly under the radar. They do exhibit at a lot of different conferences, but they're not like really out there doing the podcast circuit or the webinar circuit. But most of the people that find out about them all agree it's by far the best tool that's out there.
Okay, wow. I'll definitely have to try it out. And in terms of like WordPress plugins, do you have any favorites there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're working WordPress, you got to use Yoast for the SEO plugin so that you can optimize the things you need to optimize. Beyond that, not really any plugins that I'm a massive fan of. I kind of tend to prefer having as few plugins as possible because the more plugins you add, the more security vulnerabilities there are and the more things that can break on your site. But yeah, I mean, for sure, you got to use Yoast.
Okay, awesome. Well, going off of you speaking at all these conferences, how did you get into speaking at conferences initially?
Yeah, so I never really had a problem with public speaking or being on stage. I was class president and then student body president. I was valedictorian. I was in theater. So like I've just being in front of a crowd never caused me the anxiety that it causes a lot of people. And so years and years and years ago, when I was at the first automotive place, started going to conferences and seeing the people speaking and seeing some people that may have been sharing great info but just weren't great at public speaking, and I was in my head thinking I could totally do this, like there's no reason I couldn't. And then the owner of the company was like, hey, why don't you apply to speak at this conference? And so I did, and I started speaking, and just I approached it differently. I'm kind of a goofball, so I would tell jokes and be funny. And usually speakers at conferences, there's kind of this scale where on one end of the scale it's the really really smart people that give you really actionable awesome info, but they're not that great at public speaking. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that could get up on stage and read a phone book and everybody would say it's the best presentation ever because they're very dynamic and very engaging, but they don't really share great info. And I wanted to fall right in the center where I'm sharing really actionable excellent tips, but also where it's fun to watch and it's an enjoyable process because, people that go to conferences, you're sitting through multiple days of people on stage talking and it can get to be kind of a drag. So I kind of always approached it like that and kind of started to become a popular speaker in automotive. And then at one point spoke at the conference that I was telling you that I organized. So the first year they actually did the conference, somebody asked me to speak, and so I spoke, and everybody was like, whoa, that was amazing. And there was somebody from SMX that was in the crowd, and they said, well, you should come speak at SMX West in the spring because, like, you're great. And so then I spoke there, and then other people were like, oh, you should do this conference and this conference. And so I started doing a bunch of conferences, and then I had become friends over the years with a guy from the UK, and so he recommended me to the guy that runs Brighton SEO, which is the biggest digital marketing conference in all of Europe. And so I went and did that I think 11 years ago and was a huge hit. And I've been doing Brighton SEO twice a year because they do it every spring and every fall. So I've been doing it twice a year for either 10 and a half, 11 years at this point. And I got all of the other international stuff from other conference organizers that would go to Brighton SEO to kind of scout out speakers. And so, I've been really lucky that I've become a popular presenter and gotten to go all over the world. Been to Russia a few times, years ago, pre-COVID. Like, obviously won't ever go back now with the political climate the way it is. All over Europe, Australia. We did a conference in Bali a couple years ago that I'm actually doing again in December. So it's been pretty awesome, not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'd love to do the same thing. So I'm a relatively new public speaker. I've done 3 conferences so far. What advice would you give to someone like me who's kind of just getting into public speaking? Like, are there certain things that I need to know? You got to start it this way, end it this way. Make sure you
Yeah,
don't do
no,
this.
that's a great question, and we could talk about this for hours. And I actually keep pitching this to conferences that I think it would be a really cool conference session of how to speak at conferences. But the conference organizers are like, I don't know if that's really going to be a good vibe when people are coming to learn SEO, not coming to learn to public speak. But a lot of speakers will say, find your local Toastmasters group and start participating in Toastmasters. Uh, if you've got a lot of anxiety and you're not good at just getting up and being, being able to talk off the cuff, maybe that helps. But for me, I think the most important thing was to watch other speakers. And obviously a lot of companies or a lot of people aren't lucky enough to work for a company that exhibits at a lot of conferences where you have the opportunity to go sit in a lot of sessions because you're already going to sit at the booth for the expo hall. But you can watch a lot of things online now, and there's a lot of conferences that are virtual, so you can still see what people do and go back and watch videos of past presenters and pay attention, be a student of the game. I still go to conferences and sit in on sessions, not because I feel like I need to learn the latest and greatest tactics, because I feel like I'm pretty up to date on that stuff, but I go to watch speakers and see what speakers do and pay attention to how they present, pay attention to the layout and graphics in their slide, pay attention to the story that they tell, because you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Pay attention to vocal inflection and how people engage the crowd. Pay attention to how some people walk a lot, some people walk a little, some people stand behind the podium, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all of those. And the most important thing is to just be a student of the game. See what people do, see what the crowd vibes with. And it's not necessarily, oh, this guy did this, so I'm going to go do the same thing, because you also need to be authentic, and you don't want to try to be somebody else just because you saw somebody speak. Like, when I was coming up, it was the early days of Moz, I mean, even back when they called it SEO Moz, and Rand Fishkin was like the biggest thing in SEO, and a lot of people tried to do the Rand Fishkin thing when they presented, and you just can't do that. He's a very unique personality. And, Will Reynolds is another great one that's a very prolific speaker that a lot of people look up to. And it's very hard to do the Will Reynolds thing. It's very hard to do the me thing. I always have movie themes and bad puns and jokes related to the movies that also tie into the presentation. And that's not an easy thing to do, but I'm really passionate about movies. I mean, I'm all tatted up with movies stuff. So it's more authentic for me to do the movie thing than someone that's just not really into movies and they're just trying to do it to be entertaining. So you have to really pay attention to what works and what people do, and pick out the individual bits from here or there that vibe with you and your authentic self, so that when you're on stage, you're talking about something that you have passion for and that you authentically really care about, but you're also being your true self, and you're not trying to get up there and be a character or be like somebody else. And that's the easiest way to be successful. I mean, sure, we could talk about the layout of your slides and color theory and, telling a story of like presenting a question and then talking through your solution as a story and ending on here's the solution that answers the question I posed. I mean, all of that's important too, but I feel like the bigger part is anybody can get up there and do a presentation, and anybody can get up there and have a pretty slide deck. The people that are successful are the people that are students of the game, that learn how to be a better speaker constantly and don't just get up there and try to spout off information.
Definitely, I completely agree. And yeah, I love that. I've watched countless speakers, whether it's TED Talks or local SEO guys like you. I've watched several of your presentations. You do a great job. So yeah, being a student of the game, super important. And I think my biggest takeaway of speaking so far is that you should just optimize for being as comfortable as possible. So
Yeah.
like and it's the same way of being yourself. Like when you are being yourself, you're the most comfortable you can be. So I would have like super kind of simple slides and it'd just be pictures on them. That's the kind of guy I am. And I'm walking around, being loud and pointing to the screen and, moving all around. Like that's who I am. So I think really in public speaking, you should just embrace who you are 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's all about being comfortable on stage, because anybody can get up there and speak. Some people are going to be really nervous and they're going to crash and burn. Some people are going to be really nervous, but they've learned how to work through that anxiety. Some people don't get nervous at all, but they'll still crash on stage. So it's more about being really comfortable, both being on stage and in front of a crowd, and being comfortable talking about what you're talking about. Because all of us, no matter how great you are, you're going to get at some point where you're on stage talking about something and you're just going to blank out on what you were supposed to say for that slide. Or you're going to blank out about what the progression of your story is, and you may not even remember what's on the next slide. But if you're comfortable on stage, you're not going to freak out about it. If you aren't comfortable on stage and you have a lot of anxiety about the performance aspect, that's when you just really flounder and it gets really awkward. But like, if you just play it off like, oh yeah, I totally forgot what I'm talking about next. Oh yeah, it's that.
Yeah.
Then nobody cares. You
Uh-huh.
know, most people out there, they're not going to freak out if you don't remember what you're going to say next, or if you get tongue tied and stutter and have to restart. Like, who cares? Whatever. It's people want to see you talk about something that's going to help them be better at their job. That's literally the only reason they're there. That's a pretty low bar,
Yeah.
you know?
No, definitely. Yeah, just being spontaneous with it. Like I remember in mine, I messed up several times. I like my slides weren't loading initially, and then I like knocked over a water bottle, and then I like kind of tripped on this little curtain here, and I just rubbed it off. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
my bad, and then I'd keep going. So yeah, just keeping it like almost like an ongoing conversation that you'd have with your friends. It's not like, this big presentation that's gonna like determine your whole life. So yeah, I completely
exactly.
agree there. So for all these conferences that you've done, over 100, what have you seen come from that? Like, have you gotten like a ton of clients from that? Got a lot of followers? Like, what
I
is like the
mean,
main benefit?
yeah, I mean, the job I have now and the two places I was before this, I literally got the position I got because of my visibility in the industry. Like, when I came to SearchLab, half of it was, we want your process oriented brain to kind of restructure how we do things so that we're able to grow and scale. And the other half is, we want you because you're a speaker and that's going to bring us a lot of visibility. Other big benefits, I've gotten to travel the world because I've been a popular speaker, at this point, and this is going to sound pretentious, but there's a reason I'm going to get to. I don't pitch conferences anymore. Now, sure, some things that are vertical specific conferences where we want to be there and I'm speaking because we want leads. Okay, yeah, I'll pitch those. But like general SEO conferences, I don't pitch them. The conferences ask me to come speak. And I've gotten invited to go to some really awesome places all over the world. I've been to like 5 countries already this year since February, because I've gotten to go on all these cool trips to speak at conferences, and then also gotten to do other things. Like, I spent a week in Rome with my wife before a conference that we did in Slovenia last month. Never been to Rome? Pretty awesome, So like, that's a pretty cool benefit. I mean, sure, you end up with a lot of followers on social media, but like, I mean, that's not something that really matters to me. Some people really care that they want to have a lot of followers. I'm like, all right, cool. People like me being goofy on stage. Cool, follow me if you want. And like, most of my stuff on Twitter is fairly like goofy, at least for as long as Twitter's still around. It seems to be kind of dying. Um, but yeah, I mean, more just like quality of life stuff. Like, I've gotten to travel to cool places. I've gotten some amazing jobs doing exactly what I want to do. And then also just getting to help people. It's been really cool. A lot of the conferences that I do, the SEO like conferences, I'll do a training course the day before the conference. So the conferences will put on some sort of a deal of like, hey, you could pay $500 or $1,000 or whatever and have an all-day training class the day before the conference proper starts. And so I've done a lot of training classes all over the world, and it's cool to run into people a couple of years later and they're like, I bought a new house because my agency grew so much from all the stuff that I learned at your training class 2 or 3 years ago. And like, that's really cool to hear. And hearing about people that got better jobs and made more money because of the things that they learned from either one of my training classes or one of the sessions that they saw at a conference, that's really cool. Like, it's nice to know that I'm able to give back. I've been lucky that I've had a really awesome career. A lot of people are just satisfied in that, but I feel like I want to give back. I want to help other people have awesome careers too, and that's part of the reason I still do a lot of the stuff. I'm really starting to burn out on the travel, especially with the month I just had where I only slept in my own bed 8 nights in all of April. That kind of gets to be a drag, but it's kind of hard to stop. I kind of like it. I mean, the traveling that much altogether is a drag, but give me a month off of traveling, and I'll be ready to get back on the road again.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I definitely want to do something similar. And I totally respect you for speaking at all these conferences, helping all these people. Like I totally align with your mission. So, hats off to you, man. I wanted to kind of switch topics and go more into specifically one question that I had for you is about location service pages. So I'd say this is like the main thing that we want to be doing for local websites. So how can someone optimize a local service page? Like what should be on every single local service page?
That's an excellent question, but I need a qualifier. Are we talking about a single location business or a multi-location business? Because that's two different answers.
Let's start with single location.
So the most important thing to remember is that Google is basically just pattern detection. So you need to have the right pattern to look attractive. So there's no one thing that you can do. It's all the pieces of the whole that work. But you also have to remember that if you want to show up as a search result, when somebody types in a particular search phrase, then you need a dedicated page about that singular concept on your site. And because we're talking local SEO, you don't have to have the best page on the internet. You just need the best page in the local area about that topic. And that probably means you're answering subsequent questions, et cetera, et cetera. So that means for a local business, on your services that you offer, you need to have one page for service. And I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of businesses make, especially home service type businesses. Pest control companies will be like, hey, we're a pest control company in Dallas. We do Dallas pest control. And that includes, and then they'll have a bullet point list of rats, mice, bees, squirrels, all these different things. And it's one page for a bunch of different deals. But you have to think one page per concept. And you also have to think about the way that your potential customers are going to be searching for you. If you're a plumber, people don't really look for plumber. They look for, I need to fix a broken pipe. If people are looking for pest control, they don't look for pest control. They're like, hey, there's a beehive in my attic. How do I get rid of it? So you have to have these service pages that are concentrating on that particular individual service. And it needs to be a robust page that answers all the questions that a potential customer is going to ask. And that's really how SEO has evolved over the years. Because years ago, I would have said, oh, well, you need to have a page about rat control Dallas or rat control Denver or whatever. And that's it. And you have the keywords on the page, you get a couple links to the page, and you're golden. But now it's not that. Now it's the sites that perform well are the sites that have the most helpful content on them. The sites that truly answer all the questions a potential customer is going to ask. That's the way you win. So it's really more about remembering you need individual pages per service, and that page needs to really talk about what that service is in the language that customers use, because internally we all have our own jargon for each particular vertical that customers don't necessarily use when they're searching. You need to create the content around the way that people are searching. You need to answer their questions, answer their subsequent questions. Basically think, if someone has never bought this service before, I'm going to completely explain how everything works. And that's the way that you win.
Yeah, 100% agree. Make it as helpful and relevant as possible. So do you have any like super technical tips that maybe someone can implement right away? Like I've heard, embed a map of the city or, use the keyword this many times. Is there anything in particular that people should be adding to every single location service page? Or is it kind of just make it and you should be good?
Yeah, I mean, it's make it so you create it for people, but then optimize for the search engine. So when you're looking at these service pages, you want to use the same keyword phrase and the same location phrase in each of the page elements that you optimize, and that's where a lot of people screw up. They'll put a title tag, and let's say it's a business that's located in Dallas, and they'll put, pest control services for Dallas, Fort Worth, and Plano, and they'll put 3 cities up there. And the local algorithm doesn't work that way. You're not going to show in 3 cities just because you put 3 cities in a comma separated list. So same keyword phrase, same location phrase. And the first thing to look at is the title tag. That's the most important, most weighted element on the page. Never put your business name first because you're the only business name that. So have those phrases in there. Second most important element is the H1 heading, the big thick headline above the text area. Should be a bit more conversational, but should have the same keyword phrase and same location phrase. You should only have one H1 heading on the page. A lot of people have WordPress sites, and they'll just go in and do an H1 heading for every subheading, but that's bad. It's a bad pattern, because remember, Google's pattern detection. So use different H2, H3, H4s for the internal subheadings, just the one H1 on the page. You need that content in, or the keyword phrases in the content, but there's no magical keyword density number of like, you need to have it 22% of the content as your keyword phrase or anything like that. It's just make it conversational, make it sound like something that you would say to a customer that you're talking to on the phone or face to face. That's the right way to write the content. And if you're writing the content that's the best answer in the local area that answers subsequent questions and talks about your business and why people should buy from you, you probably don't have to do any optimization there. It's important to have the keyword phrase and location phrase in the alt text on your images. It's important to have them in the URL string for the internal pages of your site. And it's important to have the keyword phrase and location phrase in the meta description. Even though the meta description doesn't influence ranking, it does populate the content beneath your blue link when you show as a search result. And having that phrase that got searched will mean that that gets bolded in the meta description. And a lot of studies have shown that means you're going to get more click-throughs to the site. So that's really the most important thing to think about. And then it becomes more complex if you're multi-location, because if it's a single business website with multiple locations, that now means you've got to have little silos of content for each location. So if you're a pest control company and you serve Texas, so you've got Dallas, Fort Worth, Lubbock, San Antonio, Austin, Houston. Now that primary menu of services, let's say it's 5 to make the math easy, and there's 10 cities or 10 metros that you're in, that now means you got 50 pages on your site instead of 5, because that bee page, that rat page, that squirrel page, that cockroach page, you've got to have for every single city, and it has to be written uniquely every time, because a lot of people make the mistake of just having the one page and then they multiply it and they just change out the city name, and that's not effective because then it's all duplicate content.
Okay, wow, that was super valuable. Thank you for that, Greg. And what are your thoughts on internal linking? I've seen people kind of abuse internal linking. They're linking to every single page on the site. What are your thoughts on internal linking?
Yeah, I see that all the time too. So internal linking is huge. The way that you link within your site gives Google a lot of insight into what you think your most important pages are and what you want the customer journey to be on your site. And it always comes back to the pattern detection element. You have those people that will link to every page from every page, and then it's just this mass of stuff. Really, if you were to kind of graph out the internal link structure, it should almost look like a pyramid, where you've got your home page, and then the home page links to a couple of primary category pages that then link down into more detailed pages that then link down into the nitty-gritty details. And once someone goes down a path, they don't need to get links to the other paths, because if that customer is in that path, then clearly that's the path that matters to them. And linking to other things that aren't related only confuses Google and confuses your customers. And that's the biggest thing that I think most small business owners screw up on. They want to have a link to everything from everywhere, and that's not really necessary. So think about the user journey when you're doing your internal linking and kind of structure it in that pyramid format. And once somebody starts going down a path, all of the links should be related to continuing down that path and sending them through the funnel so that they're going to convert.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. No, I see every single person trying to optimize for Google when they should be optimizing for the user experience, because ultimately that's what Google is optimizing for, right?
Exactly.
So we want to make sure that the user experience is as great as possible, because that's also going to result in more conversions. So I completely agree there. And what about external links? How important is it to link to other relevant sites on your pages?
So linking out to other sites from your pages is not really that important and it's not going to be that influential. Now, do it if it makes sense, but don't do it for SEO because it's not going to do anything for you. Getting other sites to link to you is still important, but you linking to other sites, less important. A lot of people have heard misinformation over the years that Google will see you as a more valuable site if you link out to other sites. I've always thought, I mean, like, sure, it does kind of matter because you need inbound links, and inbound links are a signal, but outbound links, Google's not going to be like, oh, this pest control guy links out to Disney World and this guy doesn't. So since this guy's linking out to Disney World, he's going to rank better. Like, or even if it's something that matters, like if there's like a pest control forum that this guy links to and this other guy doesn't, it's not like Google's going to go, oh, well, he's linking out to another site that's related to his vertical, so he must be a better answer. It just doesn't work that way. So do it where it makes sense. Like, again, you're trying to write the best answer to the question that potential customers have, and maybe that best answer includes linking out to some supporting sites that talk about what you're talking about. Okay, great, then do it. But don't do it just because you're following a checklist and some site or some podcast or some video told you that to be relevant, you have to link out to other sites.
Okay, great. Yeah, I completely agree there. As for backlinks then, what would you say are some, pretty easy strategies, or not even easy strategies, like what strategies do you guys use to get local backlinks? Because a lot of people, they might be getting backlinks from, a third-party provider, it might be like a white label agency, and they might be getting high authority links, but I've seen a lot of trouble getting local links. Do you guys have any strategy for that in particular?
Oh, yeah. I've actually got a training course on the SEMrush Academy and the Bright Local Academy about exactly how to get local links. I would definitely not suggest that anyone watching this buys links from an agency or a third-party provider. Again, Google's pattern detection. It's really easy for Google to see that that's not really a link that you earned and you just paid some service to get it. So you're just spending money to do something that's not going to have any effect on your visibility. The easiest way to get local links is to do old school marketing and just be involved in the community. If you're out there and you're involved in the community, you're going to naturally acquire some links. And, then there's the standard stuff of like, you can do you could go donate to charities or sponsor a 5K or a golf tournament or a little league team or anything like that. There's all those kinds of things, but I feel like whenever I start listing out tactics for link building, people are like, oh, sponsorship link building, that's the easiest thing because I can just go buy a $100 sponsorship and get a link. But they're not thinking about the pattern detection aspect. And if you have any one tactic that's all you're doing for link building, then that's not a natural pattern. And it clearly looks like you're getting links just to manipulate your visibility, which Google frowns upon. So you have to make sure that you're crafting a more natural looking profile. So there's a lot of different things there. But again, the community involvement stuff, if you can get out and be involved in the community, you're going to naturally acquire links and it looks good. For home services companies, a lot of times it's kind of easy to say, oh, well, I just did pest control for this company. Get that company to be like, hey, I'll give you a $50 discount on our services if you just link to our website off of your website. So that's a pretty easy tactic to use. If, for a lot of businesses can't do that. If you have a brick and mortar location, you can't ask customers that come to you to link to you. That's silly. Mm-hmm. But if you're a service-based business where you're doing business at the customer's location, depending on what type of service you're providing, sometimes it's really easy to either offer a discount or offer a discount off the next time that you come back if they're going to give you a link. I really like the meetup aspect. So go to like meetup.com or Facebook groups and look for local groups that have regular monthly meetings. And you can, offer them $50-$60 a month to buy their snacks and their soft drinks if they'll give you a link. That one's a pretty good one. Neighborhood watches are great too. Again, service businesses can be great on this because you can offer a neighborhood specific discount to anyone in that particular neighborhood, because most of these neighborhood watches have somebody in the neighborhood that's like, hey guys, I could do WordPress. Let's have a WordPress site for a crime watch site. And then now they need content. So if you can give them some sort of a discount or promo that's only applicable to the people in that neighborhood, you're going to get a link from a website that has zero authority, but it is relevant down to a neighborhood level. So it's going to be really powerful in the algorithm.
Okay, awesome. That was by far the best answer I've ever heard of how to get local links. So anyone, if you are a local business owner, you might have to watch that back. Do those things because a lot of people, again, will try to buy links. They might see an ad on Facebook. I saw one a few weeks ago where you can buy 100,000 backlinks for $20. And I'm
Right.
sure
And
some people are
clearly
falling for
that's going
stuff
to
like
do
this.
nothing for you other than give some guy in Pakistan $100 or
Exactly.
$20 or whatever it is.
Exactly. So yeah, optimizing for local relevance above all, because again, we're basically all local. So we want to establish as much local relevance as possible. Not just
Exactly.
like, oh well, it's a 50 DR site though, or it's a big blog. We want to actually be getting as much local relevance as possible. So I think that is
Yeah.
a great strategy.
I mean, honestly, if you're doing local SEO, you shouldn't even be paying attention to the DR or domain authority or whatever metric those link builders are trying to use. Or when you're doing your own internal link building with your own marketing team, don't even worry about whatever those authority scores are, because those are total BS metrics that were invented by the tool companies anyway, and Google doesn't have an equivalent to those things. So you want to get local links from local businesses and local websites. That's what's going to matter.
I 100% agree. So then what about trust flow? Do you guys follow trust flow at all?
That's another one of those metrics that's our team doesn't even pay attention to the link value metrics because they're all BS and it doesn't really matter.
Okay, good to know. Another thing I wanted to ask you is where do you see the future of local SEO going? Do you see any clear path? I think I saw you on a podcast say that there's some pretty cool stuff coming up in local SEO that you can't say.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can say that where things are going?
I mean, Google is really trying to fight spam right now because there's a lot of legion companies and just spammers out there creating fake listings and fake profiles to try to make money. And Google's really trying to crack down on that. Google's really trying to crack down on fake reviews. Whether they're being successful or not is a whole different story, but at least they're trying. Um, a lot of people are kind of freaking out in the SEO world about AI content and Google's AI powered search results. I don't think we're as worried in local because you when you're searching for the best X with regular traditional SEO, sure, there's one site that's number one. In local, the guy that's number one isn't necessarily the guy that's getting the phone calls because people are looking at the map pack and where you rank in the map pack depends on where people are when they're searching. So it's not even the same within the same city between different users that are searching. And even the localized results will shift between different areas. And so I think we're a little bit isolated from the danger of having an AI interface. I think there's always going to have to be a presentation of some sort of these are the options that match what you're looking for. Um, I think I've been kind of excited with some of the augmented reality stuff that I've seen, like the Google Lens stuff, where you can potentially be walking around and be on like a city street that's got a bunch of restaurants and bars and pick your phone up and turn that app on and just point it at each place and it will recognize what the place is and just pop in what the reviews are and what people have said about it. And I think stuff like that can be really exciting. But yeah, I think just Google has really put a lot of work into updating what's going on with Google Business Profiles, how the local algorithm works over the last few years since COVID hit. And so I feel like they're at least trying to invest in making a better experience there. While at the same time, it's pretty clear Google doesn't really give a squat about small businesses. So I know that's kind of contradicting myself, but I do think that at least for the foreseeable future, local's not going anywhere. Uh, and I think there's some new additions that are coming that are really cool, but some of the things I can't really talk about because of my NDA with Google, unfortunately.
Yeah, no problem there. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I 100% don't think local's going anywhere. That's why I'm in this industry trying to help local businesses, in
Yep.
particular pest control, because the pest control industry is growing. I believe in local SEO. I believe that this industry is on the rise in terms of every single
Oh
aspect.
yeah,
So
for sure.
I'm certainly not worried. A lot of people, I mean, I'm sure you've heard every single year SEO is dead, and all these blog articles.
Every year it comes out that SEO is dead, and it's still here 20 years later, so it's not going anywhere.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on EEAT? I know that came out about a year and a half ago. What are your thoughts?
So, whenever there are SEOs out there that whenever one of the Google mouthpieces says something, they jump on it and immediately say, this is what you need to do. And EEAT is Google's way of trying to simplify the messaging around here's what a quality site would have. You can't optimize for EEAT. It is not a ranking signal. It's not something you can optimize for. It is an acronym that is meant to simplify a way of talking about what a quality site or a quality page would have. So I feel like there's a lot of buzz around it and a lot of people talk about it, but does that help you be better? Does that help you do anything for your client site or your own site better than what you're doing? Probably not, unless you were just a checklist SEO guy and you were just following this checklist that you've been following for years and you weren't really paying attention to being customer focused and answering the customer's questions and having a website experience that customers would trust is legitimate. Well, then maybe EEAT matters to you because maybe you now go, oh, well, Google's looking at the trustworthiness of my site and the layout, and does this provide a good customer experience? So in those situations, okay, it's helpful to kind of redirect the people that weren't paying attention, but I feel like those of us that have been doing legitimate SEO for a long time, when Google started talking about it, it was no big surprise. And now there's all these conference presentations where we all just kind of roll our eyes because we're like, all right, cool. You're talking about EEAT again. What's the takeaway?
Mm.
Be more authoritative and trustworthy. Okay, but that's not something you really optimize for. It's not like, I feel like if you're going to have a thing that people talk about, either in online content or in-person presentations, why are we wasting time talking about esoteric stuff that doesn't matter? Let's talk about these are the things that are actually going to help you perform better, and I don't think that EEAT falls into that category.
Okay. So then name me something that would make someone perform better. Name something that like is really kind of on the rise right now. People need to watch out for. They need to be implementing.
Exactly what we talked about earlier. It's all about content now. It's having the answers to the questions that customers are going to be asking. That's the way you win in today's world.
And do you like how strongly do you believe in blogs? I know some people
Oh, I
don't even.
very strongly believe
Okay.
in blogs. Blogs are super important because, again, you have to answer the questions that your customers and potential customers will have. And a lot of business owners and a lot of marketers make the mistake of only writing content that hits the bottom of funnel needs. Like they want to write content that's going to show up and get leads so that they can sell more and make more Benjamins, right? But you're not thinking about the fact that very rarely do people do a Google search and buy from the first website they see. The more expensive your product or service skews, the more research people are going to do before they convert into a lead. So you have to think about that. And you have to think about the fact that if you get eyeballs on your website and your business earlier in that decision funnel, you're more likely to be in consideration when they get to the bottom of that process funnel and finally decide to contact a business. So you need to be creating content around mid to upper funnel queries as well. That's the stuff of like, I hear scratching in my walls. Okay, does that mean maybe there's a hole in the roof and a possum got in? Does that mean there's a squirrel that got in? Does that mean maybe a bird made a nest? Maybe it's bees and you're hearing the buzzing from the hive. Maybe it's rats. You don't know. That's not a, I have bees and I need a pest control guy now. That's I've got something weird going on, I'm not sure what it is. That's the kind of content that doesn't make sense on the kind of main menu structure of your site. The main body of your website is that more bottom of funnel focused content, that mid to upper funnel informational type query or discovery type query. That's the stuff that makes more sense to go on the blog. And that's why you need that blog, and you should be posting there regularly, because you want to create content around all the things you want to show up for. And that doesn't just mean I want to show up for the guy that needs pest control right now. It's I want to show up for the guy that's talking about mosquito prevention or termite prevention or stuff that's way earlier in the funnel that's not going to get you business ever, but it actually will, because it'll get you business later in other sessions further down the line.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, I like to optimize for bottom of funnel first, just so that we can get those early conversions. But yeah, I 100% agree. Most people are neglecting the top and middle of funnel.
Yeah.
And most people are thinking of it top, middle, and bottom of funnel, when really the funnel is super messy. Like maybe they hear something in their attic one day, and then maybe they don't do anything for a few months, and
Exactly.
oh wait, okay, what was that pest control company? Then maybe they take a look, then they're looking at several different companies, and then they're like, oh well, I saw your blog from a few months ago, really liked it, okay, I'll choose you guys.
Exactly.
So it's not just a clear cut funnel of 1 2 3 convert for me. It's a lot more complex.
Exactly.
Yeah. About kind of last question here, maybe if we have time I'll ask another one. What are your thoughts on other platforms? Are you using YouTube or maybe Google Ads? So I'd say like the main ones are like Google Business Profile and website for local SEO. But are you doing local service ads, Google Ads, Yelp ads?
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're a vertical that allows local service ads, for sure do them. They can get pretty costly, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to manage them, but they work really well. Google ads in general are great, especially if you're a local business, because you can overcome that proximity bias where you're only going to show in the map pack if you're fairly close to the person that's doing the search. You may be on the other side of town, but you can buy ads that will put you at number one in the map pack as an ad in the map pack. So that's really powerful. Google ads in general, very powerful. It's very kind of bottom of the funnel specific. You show up, you're going to get a conversion. Like, they convert at a really high rate. Now, sure, it costs money to do it, but it works. Bing ads are super important as well, and a lot of people don't realize Bing does have a lot of users. It's the default search engine on all PCs, because all PCs ship with Edge, and Edge has Bing set as a default browser. So people that are older aren't computer savvy enough to go and switch that to Chrome or Firefox or something else, or to even switch to Google as the primary browser. Plus, all of the paid search ads on any search engine outside of Google are powered by the Bing ad network. So super important to be there. YouTube, for sure, if you do anything with video, which you should be doing stuff with video, YouTube's hugely important. My kids, like the younger generation, my kids don't go to Google to do a search for something. They go to YouTube to do a search for something. So YouTube, really powerful. I've seen some businesses really be successful with TikTok. Kind of depends, again, what your audience is. It's figuring out where your audience is and making sure that you're in front of that audience wherever they are. So if you've got a lot of audiences on TikTok, then be on TikTok. If your audience skews more towards Instagram, do Instagram. If your audience skews more towards LinkedIn, do LinkedIn. Maybe you're on all three. It's about maximizing your exposure wherever your potential clients are.
And what about offline marketing? Do you guys do any of that, or do you recommend it? Maybe commercials, billboards, any of that?
We are a digital-only agency. We only do SEO and PPC. I really don't even recommend that people do offline anymore. It's just too hard to attribute the value of what you're doing. We do have a lot of clients that do spend a pretty ridiculous amount of money on traditional stuff. They just do it because they always have. I strongly believe that for the vast majority of businesses that spend a lot of money on traditional offline advertising could probably just cut it out altogether and not see any difference, or if anything, move that spend over to digital and get a lot more out of it. I think there are some use cases out there still where it's still important to, do a billboard. personal injury attorneys in Vegas. I mean, whenever you're heading to the airport in Vegas, everything that's on visibility of heading towards the airport on those major roads is, hey, if you got hurt in a casino, call me. Clearly those billboards work, or those guys wouldn't be spending all the money to do that. So I think billboards can be effective in certain situations. TV ads can still be effective. But also you can advertise with video on YouTube and in Instagram Reels and in TikTok and probably get more attribution out of the money that you're spending. So, yeah, case by case basis, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it is very top of funnel to do offline marketing, and I think really it only applies to companies doing over, 5 to 10 million a year. If you are a smaller business, maybe $100K to $1 million a year, focus on, the basics like local service ads, getting your Google business profile and website going. So yeah,
for sure.
Last thing I'll ask you, and then we'll wrap up here, is review strategy. Do you have any particular strategy to acquire reviews? I know some people do business cards, some people do email sequences. But what do you usually use for clients, and what have you seen works best?
I mean, the most important thing is to physically ask the person, whether you're using a link in an email or business cards or postcards or a QR code on a receipt from your POS. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is to physically ask out loud for the review, because people that are pissed off are going to leave a bad review whether you ask them to or not. People that are happy probably aren't going to leave you a review. It's not really human nature to go leave a review when you have a good experience. Sure, some people will, but the vast majority won't. But then if you know somebody had a good experience and you ask them to leave a review, they kind of feel obligated at that point, and they're much more likely to leave that review. So really the biggest tip is to just ask for the review every single time you interact with the customer.
I agree. Yeah, and people are very receptive to give a review as long as you actually did a great service. Yeah. So super high conversion rate. If you just did a great service, like let's say in your situation, like they just fixed up a car and the car is like brand new, and it's just like, oh, would you please give us a review? It really helps out the business, whatever. They're like, oh yeah, of course, because in that moment they are super grateful, and they're like, oh, I just got my new car, or exactly. My house just got cleaned for pests. They are super grateful and receptive in that moment. So we want to capture that. I agree 100%. So yeah, Greg, that was a great podcast. I learned a ton. I think it was super valuable. So thank you so much for your time.
And thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, I think you lived up to the expectations that I said in the beginning there. No, you did. You definitely did. So where can people find you online?
So easiest place is at the SearchLab website, which is searchlabdigital.com. I'm also on Twitter. I'm staying on that sinking ship as long as it's still going to be out there. I'm just at Greg Gifford on Twitter. And then I'm kind of finding myself on LinkedIn a little bit more now that Twitter is dying. And same thing, LinkedIn/in/Greg Gifford.
Awesome. Well, everyone, make sure to go follow Greg. One of the G's in local SEO. Totally respect him. And yeah, let's stay in touch, Greg. And so good to talk to you.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. Have a good one.